Clare Donovan and her 6-year-old daughter, Mia, vanished in the Nevada desert without a call, a goodbye, or a trace. For 6 years, no one knew where they went, until a thermal camera, scanning restricted airspace, detected something. 2. Human-sized heat signatures lay motionless in the sand, one cold, one still warm. What was supposed to be a quiet weekend of stargazing and camping turned into a national mystery. Claire wasn't the type to disappear. A 32-year-old single mother, freelance illustrator, and weekend adventurer, she'd taken Mia on dozens of road trips before, always returning with sand in their shoes and photos full of goofy grins. But that weekend, there were no photos, no goodbye texts, no social media posts, just silence. They were last seen at a gas station outside Ely, Nevada. Security footage showed Claire buying trail mix, water, and sunscreen. Mia stood beside her, holding her favorite stuffed rabbit and spinning slowly in a sun hat. They looked calm, normal, happy. That night, at 8:03 p.m., Claire sent her brother, Daniel, a quick text. "Made it to the campsite. No signal out here, but we're safe. Love you." That was the last anyone ever heard from them. When Daniel didn't get a follow-up by Sunday night, he drove 4 hours out to where Claire had mentioned they'd be. He found nothing. No tent, no fire pit, no tire marks. It was like the desert had swallowed them whole. The official search lasted 2 weeks. Local police, park rangers, and even volunteers combed the region. Helicopters, dogs, and drones all came up empty. The harsh terrain didn't help. Jagged rocks, heat waves, sudden sandstorms. Eventually the effort slowed, then stopped. Authorities called it a tragic disappearance. Everyone else called it a mystery. But Daniel never stopped looking. Every spare dollar went into private searches. Every dead end just made him dig harder. Something inside him refused to let go, and now, 6 years later, something finally surfaced. A private defense contractor was testing a new thermal imaging drone near a restricted area in the Nevada desert. Routine mapping, routine flight. But, on the edge of a sun-baked canyon, the drone picked up something strange. 2 heat signatures, close together, unmoving. At first they thought it might be coyotes, until the scale was off. These were human-sized. One of them still faintly warm. The footage was forwarded to local authorities. Coordinates were marked, and just like that, a search team was mobilized again for the first time in over half a decade. Only this time, they knew exactly where to go. The call came through at 4:42 a.m., waking Daniel Donovan from another restless night. He had just fallen asleep on the couch, the TV flickering in the dark, when the buzzing of his phone jolted him upright. The voice on the other end was steady but urgent. A representative from a private aerospace company testing high-resolution thermal imaging equipment in restricted zones outside the Nevada test range. Daniel barely registered the technical jargon. What made him sit up straight was the phrase, "We picked up 2 distinct human-sized heat signatures, one cold, one still warm." At first, Daniel thought it was a mistake, or worse, a cruel prank. But the caller continued. The signatures were detected in a quadrant near Black Hollow, an area deep within the desert known for military testing, closed to civilians, and thoroughly off-limits. The coordinates were being sent to authorities, but given the name Donovan was attached to the archived missing persons report, they'd contacted him directly. Within an hour, Daniel was on the road, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He hadn't been back to Nevada in years. After Claire and Mia vanished, he'd stayed through the investigations, even after the search had gone cold. Then the guilt, the constant self-blame for encouraging his sister to take a trip she never returned from, had finally driven him away. But now, with this call, something was pulling him back. Meanwhile, at the Regional Search and Rescue Command post in Tonopah, teams were already mobilizing. 2 helicopters, 4 off-road vehicles, and a 6-person rescue crew prepped to approach. The coordinates. The thermal image had been transmitted to federal authorities, who, to everyone's surprise, greenlit the incursion into the restricted airspace. provided it was contained and immediate. The footage was grainy but undeniable. Two figures curled into each other like parentheses in the sand. The heat map showed one still giving off faint warmth, pulsing in irregular waves. "Could be alive," one of the medics said quietly, examining the overlay. "Barely." As Daniel's SUV kicked up dust toward the mobile command post, he was met by Search and Rescue Captain Morrow, a woman in her 50s with weathered skin and sharp eyes. She handed him a printout of the latest image and got straight to the point. "We don't know what we're walking into," she said. "Could be your family, could be something else, but you should prepare yourself either way." Daniel nodded, eyes locked on the blurry outline of two bodies, one large, one small, lying motionless in a desolate stretch of Nevada that no one had entered in years. He swallowed hard. "Just get me close, that's all I ask." By sunrise, the team was airborne, choppers slicing through golden morning light, scanners running, hearts racing. No one spoke much. They all knew this wasn't a recovery mission. Not yet. It was a question, and soon they'd find the answer. The helicopter's rotors sliced through the heavy desert air as Daniel gripped the edge of his seat, eyes locked, on the screen showing live thermal feed from the reconnaissance drone already circling the target site. Beside him sat Captain Rhee, head of the search and rescue team. His tone was all business, but his eyes were watchful. "We're about 5 minutes out. Once we land, we move quickly. The window for survival, if there is one, is closing fast." Daniel nodded, but his thoughts were a storm. 6 years. 6 years of silence, sleepless nights, and unanswered calls. He had accepted logically that Claire and Mia were gone, but emotionally, he never gave up. And now the desert might be about to answer him. As they approached the site, the landscape became jagged and unwelcoming. Cracked earth stretched for miles, interrupted only by rust-colored rock formations and sun-bleached shrubs. The drone feed zoomed in, two figures still there, one larger, one smaller, one cold, one still radiating heat. The pilot called it in. Touchdown imminent. Dust whipped into spirals as the helicopter lowered near a dry ravine. The rescue team disembarked with practiced precision, scanning the area and coordinating with the drone operator, still feeding them real-time visuals. Daniel followed, breath caught in his chest, heart hammering. They moved fast, boots crunching against sand and brittle rock, every step bringing them closer to the heat signatures. The drone hovered overhead like a silent witness. Captain Rhee raised a fist. "Halt!" They were here. Just over a ridge beneath a sloping rock face lay two bodies. One was curled protectively around the other, both covered in sand and grime, clothes sun-bleached and torn. Time had nearly erased them into the desert. Rhee stepped forward, knelt, and checked for vitals. Then he looked up. "This one's gone," he said, nodding toward the adult figure. "No pulse. Rigor set in long ago." But the smaller form, Mia, let out a barely audible sound, a strained, involuntary whimper. "She's alive." Someone shouted, "We've got a pulse!" Daniel dropped to his knees beside her. Her face was gaunt, her lips cracked, skin scorched by sun and wind. But she was breathing, alive. A medic rushed in, already unpacking fluids and gear. Daniel reached for her hand, trembling. "Mia, it's Uncle Danny, I'm here." Her eyelids fluttered. Not recognition, just instinct. But it was enough. They worked quickly, securing her on a stretcher, monitoring her vitals. Rhee turned to Daniel. "We need to get her out now. If she lasts the next hour, she might make it." And then Daniel did something he hadn't done in years. He looked up at the wide, merciless sky and whispered, "Thank you." But as the team began lifting Mia toward the helicopter, one of the medics called out from near Claire's body, "Hey, you guys need to see this." He was holding something, a notebook, weathered, bound in cloth, pages curled but intact. On the cover, in faded marker, were the words, "For Mia," in case I don't wake up." Captain Ree handed the weathered notebook to Daniel with a solemn expression. Its fabric cover was stiff with dried sweat and desert grit. Daniel stared at the words scrawled across the front, "For Mia, in case I don't wake up," and his hands trembled as he opened it. The first page was written in Claire's distinct handwriting. The ink had faded in places, but most of it was still legible. Day 3. We're still alive. The car died after we took the wrong turn off Route 93. I thought I could find a shortcut to the campsite. I was wrong. Cell service vanished, and now it's just me and Mia. I'm trying to keep her calm, trying not to let her see I'm scared. Daniel's chest tightened as he flipped through the entries. Claire had documented everything. The failed attempts to hike for help, the rationing of water, the hallucinations from heat stroke. But most of all, she wrote to Mia. Each entry was part survival log, part love letter. Day 6, Mia's birthday. I made her a little cake out of crackers and the last marshmallow. She smiled. I told her we'd make it home in time for real cake. I lied. Some pages were smeared with what looked like dried blood. Others had small drawings, hearts, stars, flowers. Mia must have drawn while Claire wrote. Then near the end, the tone shifted. Day 15. I don't know if anyone is looking for us anymore. Mia keeps asking if you're coming, Danny. I told her you are. Please let me be right. Day 19. I can't walk anymore. My legs are too weak. I'm wrapping Mia up as best I can, using the tarp to cover her from the sun. If they find her, please tell her I never stopped fighting for her. The last entry was short, scrawled as though Claire's strength had nearly vanished. Still here. Still loving you. Daniel closed the notebook slowly, swallowing hard. The rescue team moved swiftly, preparing the extraction for Mia. Her tiny body was now covered with emergency blankets and attached to IVs. Her breathing had stabilized, but she remained unconscious. Ree stepped closer. This notebook might be the only record of what really happened out here. Daniel nodded, still unable to speak. He crouched beside Claire's lifeless form one final time. He didn't cry. Not yet. He just whispered, "I'm sorry I wasn't faster." A radio crackled in the distance. "Chopper inbound, ETA 3 minutes." The team moved into position, but as they prepared to lift Mia onto the waiting stretcher, one of the paramedics paused. "Hold on, look at this." He pulled something from beneath Claire's shirt, strapped tight against her body with a homemade harness, a small metal canister. Ree took one look and froze. "Is that a flare?" Daniel leaned in. It wasn't just any flare. It was military grade, and it hadn't come from Claire's gear. Captain Ree's brow furrowed as he carefully turned the cylindrical object over in his hands. It was scratched, coated with fine dust, but unmistakable. Military grade, stamped with a serial number and the remnants of an old Department of Defense logo. "This isn't civilian issued," he said, glancing at Daniel. "It's high-end, used for covert survival ops or desert reconnaissance units. No way she brought this herself." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "So someone else gave it to her?" Ree nodded slowly. "Or someone left it behind." But either way, Claire had help. At least for a time. That possibility cracked something open in Daniel's mind. He looked back toward the spot where Claire had died, her arms still curled around. Mia, even in death. Had someone else been there? Had they offered aid and then disappeared? A soft voice cut through the air, weak, raspy. "Mom." Everyone turned. Mia's eyes were barely open, just thin slits against the harsh sunlight. Her lips were cracked, her voice barely more than a breath, but it was her, awake. Daniel rushed to her side, kneeling beside the stretcher. "Mia, sweetie, it's me. It's Uncle Danny. You're safe now." Mia blinked slowly, trying to focus. Is she okay?" Daniel hesitated, his throat catching, but he forced a soft smile. "She kept you safe. She's with us. That's what matters." Ree gave him a subtle glance, understanding the careful dodge. Now wasn't the time. Mia winced, turning her face slightly toward her uncle. He said he'd come back, she whispered. Daniel leaned in. Who, Mia? Who said that? But her eyes had already drifted shut again, her body succumbing to the exhaustion of survival and sedation. Daniel looked at Ree, who stepped closer. She wasn't alone all 6 years. Someone was here. Someone who had access to military gear, maybe even classified zones. And if that person helped them survive, Daniel added, why didn't they ever contact anyone? Ree exhaled slowly. Or worse, what if they didn't want them to be found? The sound of helicopter rotors filled the air as the medical evac team arrived. Paramedics moved quickly, securing Mia, preparing to lift her into the chopper, as Daniel stepped back. Something in the sand caught his eye, just at the edge of where Claire had been lying. A boot print, not hers, too large, too recent. Ree followed his gaze and crouched down. He studied it silently for a moment, then straightened. We need to sweep this area again, he said to the nearest ranger. Every inch. Whoever left that print may not be far. Daniel stood at the edge of the dune, eyes scanning the horizon. Suddenly, this wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a hunt. Mia was airlifted to Mercy General in Reno, unconscious but stable. As the helicopter faded into the sky, Daniel remained behind with Captain Ree and the rest of the team. Something about the boot print gnawed at him. Not just its freshness, but its direction. It didn't lead toward the shelter. It led away from it, deeper into the desert. 2 rangers and a K9 unit were dispatched immediately to follow the trail. They moved carefully, wary of loose sand and shifting dunes. Ree stayed back to coordinate, but Daniel couldn't shake the urge to follow. She mentioned someone, Daniel said quietly. Said he'd come back. If Claire died waiting for him, that means he never did, or never intended to. Ree remained silent for a moment, then handed Daniel a water bottle. We don't know if this person was friend or foe, but I promise we're going to find out. Back at the hospital, doctors worked to stabilize Mia. Severe dehydration, mild malnutrition, heat exposure. But what shocked them most was what wasn't there. No broken bones, no signs of major injury, no untreated infections. Somehow, she'd been kept alive, carefully. One nurse whispered to another, "She looks like she was protected." Daniel arrived at the hospital later that night. He found Mia in a quiet pediatric wing, hooked up to IVs, a nurse checking vitals. Her eyes fluttered open as he approached. "Hey, sunshine," he said softly. "You gave us all a scare." Mia tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Daniel offered her a sip of water through a straw. After a moment, she rasped, "They didn't want me to talk." Daniel's breath caught. "Who didn't?" She looked away. "He wore goggles, even at night. Said we were safe, but only if we stayed quiet." Daniel knelt closer. "Did he hurt you?" Mia shook her head slowly. "No, but he was scared of people, of being found. He said the desert was safer." Daniel looked at the nurse, who nodded solemnly and stepped out to alert Ree. A man with survival gear, protective but paranoid. That much was clear, but one thing still made no sense. If this man had cared enough to keep Mia alive for 6 years, why had he let Claire die? And where was he now? Back at the site, just after sunrise, the K9 unit caught the scent, a faint trail leading northeast, away from the rock shelter, and into a narrow canyon carved by centuries of wind and flash floods. The deeper the team ventured, the stranger things became. Tucked beneath an overhang, they found remnants of another camp. A tarp secured between jagged rocks, a small fire pit carefully concealed with brush, and next to it, a journal, weathered, water-damaged but still legible in parts. The first few entries were scribbled, almost frantic. "Day 2, no signal. I think they saw the car. Can't go back." Day 5, Claire is sick. I think it's dehydration. Mia won't stop crying at night. I have to keep them quiet. Captain Rhee flipped the pages slowly, his eyes narrowing as he read further. Day 11. The food's almost gone. I rationed. Everything, but Claire thinks we should head for the road. I told her, no, it's not safe. They'll be looking for us. Day 23. She doesn't trust me anymore. The final entry was dated 5 years ago. Claire went for water and didn't come back. Mia is asleep. I think I'm losing it. I hear voices out here. If they find me, I'll disappear. Daniel arrived just as the journal was being bagged as evidence. He read a few lines, then looked out over the endless expanse of red rock and shadow. They were running, he murmured. But from what? Rhee didn't answer. His radio crackled. One of the rangers had spotted something ahead. Another tarp, more empty cans, a pair of binoculars pointed back toward the shelter. Daniel's heart dropped. He was watching them, from here, even after Claire died. A moment later, one of the officers called out. Footprints, fresh ones, leading up the canyon wall and vanishing near a ledge. They scrambled up, and there, half buried in the sand, lay a makeshift grave, a shallow one. A wooden marker jammed into the rock above it. One word carved into the surface, shaky and uneven. Sorry. The wind picked up as the team stared at the crude wooden marker. It stood crookedly in the sand, a jagged piece of driftwood jammed into the ground, its edges blackened by fire. Scrolled into the surface, likely with the tip of a knife or stone, was a single word. Sorry. Nothing else. No name, no date. Just that one word that now carried the weight of 6 years of silence. Agent Turner knelt beside it, brushing away the dust around the base. Something caught her eye. 2 small flat stones laid at the foot of the marker. On one of them was a faded child's drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands. The other bore a name, lightly etched and almost illegible. She squinted. Mia. One of the medics turned pale. You don't think this is her grave? No, Turner said quickly. Mia was alive. The thermal image confirmed that. And the body found earlier, it matched Claire's description. Her voice softened. But someone buried her. Someone said goodbye. That means she wasn't alone when she died. The canine handler approached, her dog restless. We've got another scent trail, she said. It leads over that ridge. The team regrouped, following the narrow, steep path beyond the makeshift grave. It led them deeper into the desert terrain, more jagged rocks, scorched soil, and thorny brush. And then signs of human passage. Bits of cloth snagged on branches, a rusted canteen, and near a shaded rock face, a child's sock, pink and faded, half buried in sand. The medic picked it up carefully. This was hers, she said with quiet certainty. Mia's. Turner's radio crackled to life. Base to Unit 3. We're picking up a new heat signature. Small, moving, 300 yards northwest of your position. Turner's eyes widened. She's still here! The team changed course, pushing toward the new coordinates. They moved fast, urgency giving them strength. The terrain flattened slightly as they entered a dry basin framed by low cliffs. Then someone shouted, "Movement by the rocks!" All flashlights turned in unison. A shadow darted behind a boulder. The team fanned out slowly, carefully. "Mia!" Turner called out, not as an agent, but as a mother would. "We're here to help. You're safe now. You don't have to hide." Then, barely audible, a quiet, shaky whisper. "Who are you?" A small figure emerged. Thin, dirty, her hair cropped unevenly, her clothes several sizes too large. But those eyes, they were unmistakable. Mia Donovan. She blinked in the light, her arms trembling. She looked not frightened, but unsure, like a child who had forgotten what safety looked like. Turner stepped forward slowly. "Mia, we've been looking for you." And then Mia spoke again, this time barely a whisper. "He said not to trust anyone." Mia's voice hung in the dry air like smoke. "He said not to trust anyone." The team froze, exchanging uncertain glances. Agent Turner took another step forward, her tone gentle, almost maternal. "It's okay, sweetie. You're safe now. No one here will hurt you." But Mia shook her head, backing up slightly until her shoulder pressed against the cold stone behind her. Her wide eyes darted between the faces in front of her, then up toward the sky, searching for something or someone. "Where's Claire?" Turner asked softly. Silence. "She was with you, wasn't she?" Mia hesitated, then slowly nodded. "She stayed behind, so he wouldn't find me." "Who?" Turner pressed, trying not to sound alarmed. "Who's he?" But Mia didn't answer. Her eyes were wet now, though she didn't cry. She just looked down at her arms, hugging them tightly around her small frame. The medic stepped forward carefully and offered a blanket, which Mia accepted without a word. Her arms were thin, too thin, and mottled with old bruises and small scars. Not all from the desert, that much was clear. "She needs medical attention." "Immediately," the medic murmured as the team gently coaxed Mia away from the rocks. Turner radioed command. "We've got her, alive, but there's someone else, possibly hostile. Mia says Claire stayed behind to protect her. We need to search the area thoroughly." They began sweeping the terrain, establishing a wider perimeter. Meanwhile, Mia sat on a folded tarp near one of the jeeps, sipping water slowly as the medic examined her. Her eyes followed Turner, watching her every move. Turner crouched beside her again. "Can you tell me where your mom was when you last saw her?" Mia didn't respond immediately, but then she lifted her finger and pointed south, toward the sun-bleached hills beyond the basin. "She took me to the cave when it got too hot," Mia said slowly. "She said it was safer underground. Then, one night, someone came close. He had dogs, flashlights. She told me to stay hidden no matter what. And then she went outside and never came back." Turner's heart dropped. "Did you see who it was?" Mia shook her head. "I just heard voices arguing, and then silence." "Do you remember what they said?" She hesitated, then whispered, mimicking a man's deep voice. "You said no one would come looking for them. You promised it was clean." Turner stood quickly, signaling one of the agents. "Start sweeping those caves. We're not alone out here." The sun dipped lower behind the red hills, casting long, jagged shadows over the sand as the team moved toward the cave system Mia had indicated. Every step stirred clouds of dust. Silence pressed in around them, heavy and watchful. Agent Turner stayed behind with Mia, watching the girl carefully. Despite the sunburn, dehydration, and trauma, Mia hadn't stopped scanning the horizon, like she was still expecting him, whoever he was, to appear at any moment. In the canyon beyond the ravine, 2 agents found the cave entrance, narrow, partially collapsed, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. One agent, Ramirez, crouched and peered inside, his flashlight beam flickering against damp rock. "We've got movement," he whispered into his radio. "Something's been here recently." He crawled inside slowly, flashlight in one hand, service weapon in the other. The cave bent sharply after a few meters, opening into a small chamber. In the corner, he found an old camping mat, a pile of ash, and a few tin cans stacked neatly. But what caught his attention was the wall. Scratched. Into the stone were dozens of tally marks, hundreds, some in pairs, others crossed out. And beneath them, scrawled in charcoal, "I hear his boots at night." Ramirez swallowed hard and radioed in. "We need backup in this cave. There's signs of long-term occupancy." Outside, Turner's radio crackled. "Found something, possibly where Claire was staying. No sign of her body, but it looks lived in. Recent." Mia looked up sharply. "Is she there?" Turner knelt beside her. Not yet, but we're looking. Mia reached into the pocket of her tattered jacket and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Turner gently unwrapped it. A necklace, silver, tarnished. A small sea charm hung from it. She left it with me the day she didn't come back, Mia said. She said if someone found me, I had to show them this. Turner looked closer. Etched along the inside edge of the charm was something barely visible. Coordinates. Mia, she said slowly. Do you know what these numbers are? The girl shook her head. They might be where your mother went, Turner said, adrenaline spiking. We need a chopper now. These are GPS coordinates. She planned for someone to find her, and just like that, a sliver of hope cut through the desert dusk. By the time the coordinates from the necklace were verified, night had fallen over the Nevada desert. The search team prepped quickly, their flashlights piercing the darkness as a chopper lifted off, slicing the still air with its blades. Turner rode inside, clutching the paper with the GPS location scrawled on it, her knuckles white. They flew low over the rocky basin, scanning for any signs of human life. The location pointed to a plateau, isolated, surrounded by cliffs on three sides. No roads, no campsites, no markings on the map. Just open rock, brush, and a shallow cave mouth barely visible from the air. The helicopter set down half a mile away to avoid stirring debris. The team moved in on foot, night vision goggles flickering to life. As they approached the plateau, one agent held up his fist. Movement ahead. They crouched, silent. Then they saw it, a flicker of light from deep inside the small cave. Faint, unsteady. A fire? A flashlight? Turner took the lead, slowly making her way toward the entrance. She called out softly but firmly. Clare Donovan, this is Special Agent Turner with Search and Rescue. If you can hear me, please respond. No answer. They entered cautiously. The inside was cramped and bitterly cold. Along one wall, someone had constructed a crude windbreak of stacked rocks and blankets. On the floor, bundled beneath a layer of jackets and tarp, was a woman, thin, dirty, unmoving. Claire, Turner whispered, moving quickly to her side. She reached out and pressed fingers to her neck. A pulse. Faint, but there. She's alive, Turner called. Paramedics rushed forward, applying oxygen and checking vitals. The woman stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. Her voice cracked as she tried to speak. Is she safe? Turner leaned in, her voice calm and sure. Yes, Mia is safe. She made it out. She's waiting for you. Claire choked on a sob, her body shaking as the medics worked. For 6 years, she'd survived, clinging to hope, rationing food, carving days into stone, watching the horizon for help that never came, until tonight. As they carried her out of the cave and into the night, the stars above seemed brighter than ever. And for the first time in 6 years, Clare Donovan was going home. Claire was rushed to a field hospital set up just outside the restricted zone, her body fragile, her mind hovering somewhere between reality and exhaustion. Her first words, after being stabilized, weren't about food or water. They were about Mia. Where is she? I need to see her, please. Turner knelt beside the cot and gently placed a reassuring hand on Claire's arm. She's safe. She's been with us for 2 days now. She's in a recovery center nearby getting care. Claire's lip trembled. She made it. Turner nodded. She's been asking about you every day. Tears streamed down Claire's face. I thought I lost her. I thought they took her. Turner's tone sharpened. Claire, do you remember what happened out there? Claire closed her eyes, a wave of pain crossing her face. Bits, pieces. There was a man. I never saw his face. He came at night, left food, took things. I think he was watching us. I think he waited until I left her alone just for a second. You're saying Mia was taken? Claire nodded slowly. I searched the desert for 2 days after she vanished, screaming, begging, and then the lights came. I hid. I didn't know who I could trust. I waited for years. Turner's expression tightened. Everything Mia had said matched. Someone had taken her, someone organized, careful, practiced. But the trail was cold. Until now. Back in the recovery unit, Mia sat on her bed, hugging a stuffed bear donated by a local volunteer. When Turner walked in, her eyes lit up. "Did you find her?" Turner smiled gently. "She's here, sweetie. She wants to see you." Moments later, Claire was pale and trembling, but awake. The room fell silent as mother and daughter locked eyes and then burst into tears. Mia leapt into her arms, and Claire clung to her like the past 6 years had been a bad dream. "I missed you so much," Claire whispered. "I knew you'd come," Mia sobbed. "I waited and never gave up." Turner turned away to give them privacy, but not before wiping a tear from her own cheek. She'd seen a lot in her career, but moments like this were why she still believed in miracles. After the tearful reunion, Claire and Mia were moved to a secure facility where a specialized trauma unit could oversee both physical and psychological recovery. Doctors were cautious. 6 years in the desert wasn't just a physical ordeal. It rewired the brain, rewrote how a person processed the world. Claire slept for nearly 16 hours straight. And when she awoke, the doctors were ready with soft questions and slow pacing. But Claire surprised them. Her answers were fragmented, but clear. She remembered dates. She remembered the landscape. And she remembered the fear. "There were tire tracks," she said softly, sitting up in bed with Mia tucked beside her. "Always fresh, but no engine sound. I started thinking I was imagining them. But then things would move. Supplies would disappear or appear." Turner listened carefully, taking notes from the corner. "Once, a blanket showed up, folded, clean. Not mine," Claire added, shivering at the memory. "Another time someone left jerky, not the kind I packed." "Why didn't you signal the outside world? A fire? A message?" asked one of the doctors. Claire looked down. "Because he always came after. Every time I left something visible, it was gone by morning, like someone was watching, like someone didn't want us found." Turner leaned in. "Claire, you said Mia vanished and then reappeared." Claire nodded. "She was gone for 3 days. I lost my mind, but then I found her near the old mining outcrop. She was different, quiet, like something had scared her. So badly she shut down." Mia, listening quietly, finally spoke. "He told me not to talk, or he'd hurt Mommy." Everyone turned to her. Her voice was calm, almost eerie. "I didn't talk, not once, not even when he brought food." Claire's hand squeezed hers. "It's okay, baby. You're safe now." But Turner's mind was racing. Someone had been out there, not just a random camper, not just a recluse, someone careful, methodical, and still out there because they hadn't caught anyone yet. The next morning, Turner met with a pair of federal investigators who had flown in overnight. What had started as a missing persons miracle was now potentially something far darker, possibly criminal. The thermal drone footage had been reviewed frame by frame, and while it captured Claire and Mia huddled in the sand, one detail had been missed on the initial pass. In the top corner of the frame, barely visible through the haze of heat bloom, was a third shape, not lying down, not human-sized, upright and walking. Turner stared at the image on the screen. "Are we sure that's not just an artifact?" "Thought so," one of the analysts replied. "But when we compared the other frames, it moves, frame by frame, same trajectory, walking away back toward the canyon wall." "So someone was there, watching," Turner muttered. They dispatched another drone, this time higher resolution, longer range. It swept the canyon at dawn, flying low and slow across the jagged cliffs. For an hour it found nothing, just rock and shadow. And then a glint, metal, nestled in a crevice that didn't show on topographical maps. Zooming in, the drone revealed a man-made structure, half buried in the rock, like a shipping container or shelter. The surface was rusted, scorched by sun and wind. But it was real. The feed cut for a moment, then flickered back, and for a split second, someone moved in front of the structure, hooded, barefoot, and then they vanished back inside. Turner stood frozen. Whoever this was, they hadn't run. They hadn't even tried to hide. They were waiting. The discovery of the shelter changed everything. Turner, now joined by a tactical team and a forensic anthropologist, prepped for an immediate response. The area surrounding the canyon was declared a restricted zone. No media, no civilian drones, no unauthorized vehicles. Whatever or whoever was in that makeshift shelter had remained undetected for 6 years. They weren't going to risk scaring them off now. The team began their approach at first light, descending silently through the western ridge. The sun hadn't yet crested the canyon wall, and shadows bled over everything, swallowing sound. The only noise was their boots against loose shale and the low hum of the drone that hovered high above, tracking every movement. When they reached the mouth of the crevice, Turner held up a fist. Everyone froze. Just beyond the boulders, built directly into the stone, was the rust-streaked entrance they'd seen in the footage. What looked like the side panel of a shipping container, now functioning as a crude door. It was reinforced with wire mesh and a locking bar. Someone had lived here for a long time, and just as they were preparing to call out, the door creaked open. Everyone tensed. Out stepped a man, barefoot, sunburned, rail-thin, and moving slowly with a limp. He raised both hands, squinting into the daylight. "I'm not armed," he said quietly. "You don't need your guns." Turner lowered her weapon slightly. "Who are you?" The man gave a weak smile. "I was the one who found them, Claire, and the girl. I didn't take them. I helped them stay alive." The team stared in stunned silence. "You knew they were missing," Turner said cautiously. "And you didn't come forward?" "I didn't know who they were," the man said. "I've been off-grid since 2012. I saw them stumbling through the desert and figured they were just another lost pair. I took them in, fed them what I had, taught them how to avoid the sun, gave them shelter when the heat broke them down." "Where are they now?" Turner asked, voice tight. The man's expression darkened. "The mother, Claire, she didn't make it through the 3rd year. Infection from a wound. I tried to help, but I'm no doctor." Turner's stomach dropped. "And the girl?" He turned and pointed back into the shelter. "She's inside, sleeping. I didn't want to move her. Not until I was sure it was safe." Turner nodded at the medics, who rushed forward. They found Mia in the rear corner of the shelter, nestled beneath layers of old army blankets and canvas. She was thin, skeletally, but alive, pale, dehydrated, barely responsive, but breathing. And next to her, carefully wrapped in cloth and placed like a memorial, were Claire's remains, bones, jewelry, a faded photo of the two of them taped to the inside wall. The rescue team stood in reverent silence. Claire had stayed with her daughter, even in death. Turner stepped outside, shielding her eyes from the rising sun. For 6 years, the world had written them off, buried them in headlines, dismissed them as another desert tragedy. But now, Mia was going home, and the world would finally know the truth. The airlift was arranged within the hour. Paramedics gently lifted Mia onto a stretcher, her fragile frame swaddled in warm thermal blankets. Despite her extreme condition, her vitals were holding steady, a quiet miracle. She didn't speak, didn't resist, just stared ahead with unfocused eyes, as though her body had returned to the world, but her mind was still somewhere in the canyon. The man, who identified himself only as Wes, watched silently from the shelter doorway, arms crossed, jaw clenched. As the chopper blades thundered overhead, Turner approached him one last time. "You realize you could have come forward sooner," Turner said. Wes didn't answer immediately. He glanced toward the sky, the wind from the rotor wash pushing back his unkempt hair. "I buried a daughter out here once," he finally said. "Long time ago, heat stroke. She was 5. Her name was Lucy." He exhaled long and slow. "When I found Claire and Mia, it was like being given a second chance. I couldn't let go." Turner nodded slowly. There was judgment in her heart, but not enough to speak it out loud. "I didn't hurt them," Wes added. "You'll find nothing in that shelter that says otherwise. I just kept them hidden from everything." "You didn't save Claire," Turner said softly. "No," Wes agreed. "But I kept Mia alive. That has to count for something." Turner didn't respond. She watched as Wes turned and stepped back into the shadows of the shelter, where legally they'd be returning with a warrant soon enough. For now, though, all that mattered was the girl. The helicopter landed at a trauma center just outside Reno. Reporters swarmed the fences within hours of the story breaking. "Missing girl found alive after 6 years" blared across screens nationwide. Mia became a national headline overnight. The photograph of her tiny frame on the stretcher, sunken eyes, bandaged hands, blonde hair matted to her skull, spread like wildfire. But none of that touched her. Doctors confirmed malnutrition, dehydration, sun damage. Deep scars on her back, knees, and one shoulder. Healed, but still raw. Her feet were covered in thick calluses. She hadn't worn shoes in years. She had no language retention beyond. Fragments. Her voice was barely above a whisper, and most notably, she resisted fluorescent lighting. It sent her into fits of panic, forcing nurses to dim every room she entered. She was responsive, though, especially to touch. She gripped the hands of any nurse who came near, but she didn't talk. Not until the 4th night. That's when a doctor showed her an old photo, one recovered from the shelter. It was a snapshot of Claire holding Mia at age 3, both smiling mid-laugh. The doctor simply held it out and asked, "Do you know who this is?" Mia stared for a long moment. Then finally she whispered, "Mommy." The nurses cried. One collapsed in the hallway. Back in Nevada, Turner reviewed the full contents of the shelter. They cataloged every item: handmade tools, dehydrated food pouches, weathered journals, a makeshift solar rig for minimal power. There were even drawings. On the walls, done in childlike scrawl, sun, stick figures, a figure labeled Mom with a crown over her head. But most haunting was the single word repeated over and over in shaky handwriting. "Don't forget," written dozens of times, sometimes in chalk, sometimes carved into stone. "Don't forget." The hospital room was quiet, dimly lit with a single lamp casting soft shadows across the walls. Mia lay curled in bed, eyes open, silently watching the door. A nurse had left a small plush toy beside her, something soft and blue, but she hadn't touched it. Detective Turner stood outside the observation window with Dr. Reyes, the hospital psychologist assigned to Mia's case. They watched the little girl in silence. "She started making eye contact," Reyes said. "Only recently. That's progress." "Has she talked about what happened?" Turner asked. Reyes hesitated. "Not directly. Most of what we know is coming through drawings. She doesn't describe events, but she's expressing emotion. That's how trauma starts to process in children." Turner glanced down at the folder. In his hand. Inside were sketches done by Mia over the past few days. One showed a figure holding her hand under a blazing sun. Another showed what appeared to be a stone wall covered in red. One drawing, barely more than lines and shapes, showed her lying next to a woman under a large moon. "She slept beside her mother's body," Turner said quietly. 4 days. Maybe longer. Reyes nodded solemnly. Kids adapt to horror in ways we can't always comprehend. She survived by clinging to whatever comfort she had left. There was a long pause. Then Turner asked, "What about the man, Wes?" We ran his prints, Reyes replied. Name's Wesley Granger, former park ranger. Lost custody of his own daughter 15 years ago after a failed custody battle. Dropped off the grid shortly after. We're still digging into whether he has a criminal record, but so far it's complicated. Do you think he kidnapped Claire and Mia? Turner asked. No, Reyes said firmly. I think he found them, but I also think he made a decision to keep them isolated. Maybe he thought he was protecting them. Maybe he was projecting his own loss. Either way, it wasn't his decision to make. Later that evening, Turner returned to Mia's room alone. She was still awake, her eyes tracking his movement as he approached the chair beside her bed. He sat slowly, folding his hands in his lap. The room was so quiet he could hear the hum of the heart monitor. I wanted to tell you something, he said softly. About your mom. Mia blinked slowly. She didn't stop fighting, Turner continued. We found her journal. She wrote about you every day, how proud she was, how brave you were, how much she loved you. He watched as Mia's small fingers tightened around her blanket. She made it her mission to keep you alive, he said. And you made it. A single tear rolled down Mia's cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. She simply whispered. She sang to me. Every night. Turner swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. I know. They sat in silence for several minutes. Then Mia reached slowly toward the edge of the bed, her hand hovering in the air. Turner hesitated, and then gently placed his hand in hers. It was small, cold, but steady. She never gave up on you, he said again, more to himself than to her. Mia nodded once, her eyes finally closing. In the weeks that followed, the story became legend. Desert Angel, girl found alive after 6 years, read the headlines. Clare Donovan was laid to rest on a hillside in her hometown, the funeral attended, by hundreds, most of whom had never met her but felt like they had. And Mia. She would spend the next year in intensive therapy, surrounded by people determined to help her reclaim her life. She never returned to the desert. She never spoke. Of the man with a deep voice and kind eyes. She never told anyone exactly what happened between the second day of their trip and the moment she was found. But 1 year later, she returned to school in a new town under a new name. And when her teacher asked the class to write one sentence about something they'd never forget, she wrote only 4 words. She stayed with me. Because sometimes survival is more than just being found. Sometimes it's who found you. Thanks for sticking with the story until the end. If you enjoyed it, give this a like and share if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.